Council hearing for the Subcommittee on Landmarks. Participate in today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms. Without further ado, Chair Marte, we are ready to begin.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a meeting of Subcommittee on Landmarks, Public Siting, Resiliency, and Dispositions. I'm Councilmember Christopher Marte, and I am Chair of the Subcommittee. Before I begin, I just want to thank Speaker Adams for bestowing me the responsibility of this subcommittee. The importance of landmarks, our public land, and resiliency is extremely important, not just recognizing our past, but also building for the future. I, as chair, want to continue to talk about what landmarks means to our city and to who we are as New Yorkers. Most folks don't know, but only 3.9% of all city lots are landmarked. And over the past 4 years, there's been a false narrative. How landmark was the enemy of affordable housing, how landmarks was the enemy of development. Actually, from my experience, it's landmarks that actually protect rent-stabilized units and tenement buildings all throughout our city. It's landmarks that help us recognize the phases of development that our city went through its history. And so I'm excited to not only fight back against this false narrative, but to use this as an opportunity to organize, to encourage not just landmarking and protecting who we are as people, but also fighting to make sure that public land is a public good and for the public. And so with that responsibility, I begin our first hearing of this term session. Thank you. First, I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being held in a hybrid format. And quickly, I want to recognize my colleagues who are here today, Councilmember Rita Joseph, Councilmember Chia Ose, Councilmember Santososo, great. Councilmember Thomas Henry and Councilmember Hanks. For members of the public who wish to testify remotely, we ask that you first register online, and you may do so by visiting www.council.nyc.gov/landuse to sign up and then sign into the Zoom and remain signed in until you have testified. For anyone with us today in person and wish to testify, if you have not already done so, please see one of our Sergeant of Arms to fill out a speaker card, and we will call your name at the appropriate time. For anyone wishing to submit written testimony on the items being heard today, we ask that you please send an email to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov, including the LU number and/or project name in the subject line of your email. Video and audio testimony would not be accepted. I remind members of the public that this is a governmental proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent unless and until called to testify. The witness table is reserved for the people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, member of the public may not present audio or video recording as testimony, but may submit transcript of such recordings to the sergeant for inclusion in the hearing record. On today's agenda, we have several hearings. LU1, Prospect Farm acquisition for the acquisition of a site for continued use as a community garden. LUs 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the Constellation HPD home ownership project. LUs 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 for Seaside Park and Community Art Center. A project by New York City DCAS and EDC seeking several city approvals to improve and continue the use of Seaside Park and Community Art Center in Coney Island. LUs 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 for 395 Flatbush Avenue Extension redevelopment, a project by HPD in conjunction with DOHMH and DCAS to facilitate the development of a 72-story mixed-use building in downtown Brooklyn. And a joint hearing for pre-considered LUs for the landmarking of Beverly Square Historic District and Ditmas Park West Historic District. I now open a public hearing for LU 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 for the Seaside Park and Community Arts Center special permits, an application by DCAS and New York City Economic Development Corporation seeking several approvals to facilitate the improvement and continued use of Seaside Park and Community Arts Center located in Councilmember Santos Soso's district in Brooklyn. These actions include a zoning text amendment to allow a larger event venue, as well as a zoning special permit to allow an arena with up to 6,000 seats. Additionally, this application is seeking the acquisition by the city of a small portion of land to complete the site and deposition of city-owned land. Appearing today on this panel is Greg Vangart. Did I say that correctly? Okay. Amy Jin and Eric Gardner. Those wishing to testify remotely, again, must register online by visiting the council website at council.nyc.gov/land use. Panelists, please ensure that your microphones are on. You can notice it by the red light turning on. Council, would you please administer the affirmation?
Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and state your name for the record? Make sure the microphone is on.
My name is Amy Jin.
Eric Gardner.
Greg Vingert.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this subcommittee and in answer to all council member questions?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Before you begin, I want to recognize Councilmember Felice has joined us online. You may start. And Councilmember Aviles.
All right, thank you so much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair and fellow committee members. My name is Greg Vingert. I am the Brooklyn Borough Director for Government Affairs at EDC, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Amy and Eric, and we're happy to be here and talk about Seaside Park Community Arts Center special permit. I'm also a Coney Island resident, so this is important to me as well. Quickly, if you turn to slide 2, just the project overview. As you see, the applicants are Seaside Park LLC, NYC EDC, and then NYC DCAS. And then on slide 3, as you could see, we have a photo of where the amphitheater, as we like to call it in Coney Island, Seaside Park, is located. As you could see, it's surrounded by the world-famous Riegelman Boardwalk, the landmark Childs Building, and not too far off, you could see Maimonides Park, where the Brooklyn Cyclones play. A little bit of background on the amphitheater. In 2013, then Brooklyn Borough President Marty Markowitz allocated funds for site acquisition of this amphitheater for outdoor performing arts, public accessible open space, and the restoration of the landmark Childs Building. It was to be a catalyst for continued investment in Coney Island, as well as support the development goals for the area. The original URP approval was in 2014 for a design that included a temporary retractable roof that could be removed during the off-season. That roof proved infeasible based on DOB requirements, so Safehold, who was the operator, built a permanent roof. The current SP commenced. The current 10-year SP commenced June 2016 upon receipt of the TCO. I'll pass it over to my colleague Amy to talk more about the land use action.
Can we go to the next slide, please? One more slide. Thank you. So before you today is several land use actions, the first of which is a zoning text amendment to ZR Section 74, 182, and 131.16 and 131.60 to permit an arena in excess of 2,500 seats. The text amendment effectively moves the special permit out of the Coney Island Special District section of the zoning resolution and moves it into the section of the zoning resolution where all the other arena special permits live. And then we're seeking a zoning special permit per this new special permit, zoning resolution section 74, 182, to allow an arena with a maximum of 6,000 seats with waivers to signage, parking, and loading requirements. We're also seeking an acquisition by DCAS of a portion of Lot 123. It's outlined on the diagram in blue here. It is a remnant of an older tax lot where a street was built through the middle portion of it, and this is the remaining portion that's adjacent to our site. And so EDC currently owns it. We would like for the city to own it so that the city can dispose of it together with these facilities. We are seeking a disposition of city-owned property for all of the tax lot parcels outlined in orange on the diagram. So this includes the Child's Building, the historic landmark Child's Building, the amphitheater itself, and the adjacent open space to the left, to the west of the amphitheater. This disposition would be restricted to the conditions of the special permit to facilitate the continued use and operation of the complex for 10 years. And so at the CPC, they restricted this disposition to 10 years and approximately 6 months to coincide with an expiration of the end of year 2036. And then the last action is a disposition of city-owned property for the Child's Building and the adjacent open space. So it's lot 130 and 123 on the diagram here. As I mentioned, the Child's Building is a New York City landmark. You may be familiar, but the Child's Building fell into disrepair for some time before Safehold came in, restored the building, and is now operating it. And so we're seeking this disposition so that the city is able to continue to tenant the Child's Building past the useful life of the amphitheater in perpetuity so that this sort of state of disrepair won't happen again. Those are all the land use actions proposed for this project. I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague, Eric.
Hi, good morning, everyone. You can advance to the next slide. Just to provide a overview of the asset itself and some site context. So the amphitheater was built and landmarked, and the landmark Child's Building was restored by Safehold. At the time was known as iStar. DCP granted a special permit to operate the amphitheater for 10 years in 2014. In terms of current uses at both the amphitheater and the Child's Building, the amphitheater is a 5,000-seat covered open-air venue. It is currently leased to Safehold and operated by Live Nation. It's hosted performances from a wide variety of artists, including Sting, the Beach Boys, Ice-T, Foo Fighters, Willie Nelson, and everyone in between. There's also been community events that have been hosted at the amphitheater, including film screenings, the Mermaid Parade Ball, and the Pizza Zoo anniversary party. The Child's Building itself is 56,000 square feet. It is a landmark historic building. It also includes a rooftop space. It is leased to Safehold currently and subleased to Live Nation, and it has been operated as a restaurant by the subtenant. Go to the next slide, please. On January 6th of this year, EDC released a RFP to find a new operator or consortia of operators in the entertainment and food and beverage industries that can bring innovative ideas to how to make this asset perform even better and activate it for the community. The goals include driving increased foot traffic to the western half of the boardwalk, continuing to improve how this asset performs overall, especially for the community, and to also maintain and expand the amphitheater's status as a very unique New York City entertainment venue. We anticipate on selecting an award in spring of this year.
Thanks. Can we go to the next slide, please? So through this year process, obviously we met with the community board. So a few recommendations that the community board had about better activation of the site, including free community concerts, community event support, and very important for them to continue use of the space for graduations. Next slide, please. And then this is our final slide. Just one more look at the proposed development. So the approval of as-built Cornell Amphitheater per new special permit with waivers for signage, parking, and loading, and then an enlarged project area to include additional open space on the site as well as portion of lot 123. That concludes our presentation. Thank you very much, and open for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My first question is, how long is it estimated to take to complete the new park improvements and additions?
Okay, sorry, can you repeat that question? Sorry.
How long do you estimate once you get an applicant on board and approved? How long would it take to estimated? Like, would it be ready to open up this summer, next year? What's the timeline for EDC hopes for it to be completed?
Oh, for the overall site, not necessarily the park addition.
Correct.
So we're hoping that we can select an awardee that would be able to, at best, start offering programming maybe at the end of the summer, early fall.
Mm-hmm.
We'd certainly have a preference for that. But otherwise, we would be looking for either a tenant for just the Child's Building, a tenant or group of tenants for both assets, or just a tenant for the amphitheater that would be able to activate it as soon as possible.
Okay. And can you briefly explain community engagement throughout this process before you release the RFP?
Yeah, absolutely. So we appeared before the community board multiple times, and we're able to get a list of local arts organizations that we included in the RFP. And we're going to show a preference toward any respondent that has shown evidence of engagement with those local arts communities, local arts organizations in terms of the character of their response.
If I could just also add, we also had multiple conversations with former council member Justin Brannon, as well as our current new council member who was Justin's staff, as well as some local businesses, stakeholders around the area, as well as the other electeds. Me being a resident there, I made sure everybody had understood what's happening, had a say, and really understood like what this next 10 years might look like for the amphitheater.
Great. And with that, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Santa Soso with some questions.
Thank you, Chair Marte, and good morning, everyone. I am Councilmember Kayla Santosuoso, representing the 47th District in Brooklyn. I am here to discuss the Seaside Park and Community Arts Center special permit application in Coney Island in my district. As you've just heard, this application involves multiple actions, including the proposed text amendment and special permit relating to the 5,099-seat amphitheater, as well as the associated property acquisition and dispositions needed to lease and operate the site. I recognize this application intends to bring the existing amphitheater into compliance and to improve park infrastructure and expand publicly accessible green space, which I believe are important goals for the neighborhood and for our district as a whole. I appreciate that the applicants reflected recognition of the importance of community input as demonstrated through EDC's request for a proposal for new operation of the site. That RFP includes various community boards' recommendations, such as the use of workforce programs and the continuation of 6 free events per year. I look forward to hearing more on the aspects of the proposed project which align with community goals. And I just have a few questions. So first of all, I know you sort of touched on this, but how did you respond to the community board's recommendations, and how are those responses reflected in the proposal, more specifically in the RFP? So I know you touched on the arts outreach, and I know you've reached out to us. Anything else you can share about any of the concerns that came up during the community board's revision process?
Yeah, absolutely. So included in the RFP is a requirement that any respondent come with a plan for how local community arts organizations as well as schools can continue to use it for graduations and local community events. And there will also continue to be the operating covenant in the lease that will be signed with the new tenant that will include a requirement for a certain number of free community concerts throughout the year.
Anything beyond use of the amphitheater, anything around, the impact on the surrounding community, or anything involving infrastructure, sound levels, anything like that?
Yeah, I can take the sound level one. Give me a second. So in terms of the sound levels, they'll continue using professional sound level meter to continue making sure that sound levels are up to I guess what's the word, up to accord with the rules and regulations of the city. Also, since the amphitheater has been operating, I spoke to the operator, and there's been at most maybe a handful of complaints over the years. So continue to make sure that there's no disruption as these events are happening, as well as obviously making sure the community knows these events are happening as well, so nobody's caught off guard, right? Like advance notice and things like that.
Given that, will there be time cutoffs? Will there be any, rules around what time concerts can go until in the amphitheater, or any consideration for lateness for the surrounding residents?
Absolutely. I think we don't want it going into past like overnight hours, and I don't think it has in the past as well. I could double check for you, but I believe concerts were done probably around the 10:30 hour.
Okay. And I imagine that a lot of this will also be hammered out with whoever is eventually selected for the RFP.
Absolutely, yep.
And what mechanisms will be utilized to ensure ongoing communication with the surrounding community?
Sure, you want to take that one?
Yes, we anticipate having a requirement of the lease be an annual report that that the tenant will have to produce, outlining the summary of operations and community engagement that they've done throughout the year. And we'd like to have them meet periodically with the community board as well.
Okay, and then my last question, and I realize you don't have a crystal ball, but I understand that this is continued use and operation for 10 years as an amphitheater until 2036. Do you surmise or have any thoughts about what would happen at that point?
That is a tough. Do you want to take that one, Amy?
No, I mean, I think we anticipate having as many or more concerts and events and kind of further integration of the community arts center and the community itself throughout the 10-year period. And at that point, we'll need to make a decision. We'll hopefully have 10 years of record of why it continues to be a vibrant cultural asset for that part of the boardwalk.
Yeah, but it's a landmarked building, so it stays the operation of an amphitheater, and the hope would be that it continued for that purpose, right?
I just want to clarify, the Child's building itself is landmarked, but the amphitheater is not.
Amphitheater is not.
Yeah.
Right, okay, got it. All right, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like now to recognize any of my colleagues if anyone has any questions or remarks. I also want to recognize Councilmember Hudson for joining us. Well, thank you. The applicant panel is now excused.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this item?
I don't have any, but was there anybody here for this application? One moment.
I see no hands. If there are any remote public participants who wish to testify and have not already done so, please press the raise hand button now. And if you are here with us in person, please see one of our Sergeant of Arms to fill out a speaker card. And no one online? Okay. There being no other members of the public who wish to testify regarding LU 7891011 for the Seaside Park and Community Arts Special Permit, the public hearing is now closed and the item are laid over. I now open a joint public hearing for two pre-considered items, Beverly Square West Historic District and Ditmas Park West Historic District. These two applications are by Landmarks Preservation Commission for the designation of historic districts in these areas, both located in Councilmember Joseph's district in Brooklyn. I would now like to recognize Councilmember Joseph with a few comments.
Thank you, Chair Marte. Good morning, and thank you, Chair Marte. I'm here to express my strong support for the Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West historic districts. These historic designations affirm that preservation and progress can and must go hand in hand. We can welcome growth and address our city housing crisis while protecting the character, culture, and history that define Flatbush. This process has sparked debate in the community. Some of us have pushed for larger boundaries for the Beverly Square West Historic District. And I've heard from a few folks who don't want these districts at all. With that in mind, I want to thank LPC for their meticulous and thoughtful approach to this process. The proposed historic district would ultimately allow us to honor these neighborhoods' architect, history, and identity without seriously limiting our ability to add nearby housing for future generations who wish to call these beautiful neighborhoods home. This victory is a result of decades sustained advocacy. I am incredibly proud to have worked in lockstep with residents, community leaders, preservation activists, and historians who share a commitment to safeguarding what makes these neighborhoods special. This designation is a testament to what we can accomplish when we stand together as a community. I'm also proud to have voted for City of Yes and promise of a little more housing everywhere. There's not a day that goes by that my office doesn't hear from someone facing hardship over a housing situation. I look forward to working with the new administration to welcome desperately needed new housing to my district. We can do our part for our future while still honoring our past. As your council member, I remain deeply committed to continuing the fight for preservation in all its forms, not only for our buildings, but for the people, the stories, and the vibrancy that makes up District 40 home. Thank you to everyone who helped make this possible. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Great. Appearing today on this panel is Stephen Thomas and Timothy Frey. For those wishing to testify remotely, please register online by visiting the council website at council.nyc.gov/landuse. Panelists, please ensure that your microphones are on. Council, would you please administer the affirmation?
Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and state your name for the record?
Timothy Fry.
Stephen Thompson.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this subcommittee and in answer to all council member questions?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, applicant panelists. For the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landuse@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin.
May I have the slide presentation, please? Okay. Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Tim Fry, LPC staff, and today I'm presenting the Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West Historic Districts designated on November 25th of 2025. And these districts reflect a key moment in Flatbush's transition from farmland to an early suburban neighborhood. Next slide, please. Here we go. Both districts are located in historic suburban Flatbush, extending south from Prospect Park towards Brooklyn College. This area already includes several LPC designated districts. Next slide, please. Prospect Park South, which was designated in 1979, Ditmas Park, designated in 1981, and Fisk Terrace Midwood Park, designated in 2008. Beverly Square West includes 118 houses built primarily between 1894 and 1910. Ditmas Park West includes 127 houses, largely built between 1902 and 1910. The boundaries of these compact districts were determined after extensive analysis of a much broader area and include the most significant and intact buildings and the most contiguous streetscapes. Through the designation process, there were several non-contributing buildings on the edges that were removed. Next slide. At its October 21st, 2025 public hearing, LPC heard substantial support for both historic districts. 33 people spoke in support or in favor of the Beverly Square West Historic District, and no one spoke in opposition. For Ditmas Park West, 10 people spoke in favor of designation, and 3 people spoke in opposition. We also received strong supportive testimony, including elected officials such as Assemblymember Robert Carroll and Councilmember Rita Joseph, as well as the Flatbush Development Corporation, Prospect Park South Association, the New York Landmarks Conservancy, Historic Districts Council, and the Victorian Society of New York. Many in favor of designation also encouraged the Commission to consider expanding the proposed boundaries. Next slide, please. With that context, I'll start by focusing on the Beverly Square West Historic District and its development and its architectural character. Next slide. Development began in 1894 and was largely complete within a decade. This rapid period of development gives Beverly Square West remarkable architectural cohesiveness, which is characterized by Queen Anne, Colonial Revival, and shingle-style houses. Throughout the district, contiguous streetscapes, including original landscape features, remain generally intact. Houses are set behind open lawns, forming a continuous belt of greenery, and planting strips separate the sidewalks from the curbs. Next slide, please. Now I'll turn to the Ditmas Park West Historic District, which shares a development history and architectural character. Next slide. Ditmas Park West was a project of Lewis Pounds and his Manor Realty Company. In 1902, Pounds purchased the former John Ditmas farm, which had largely been farmed using the labor of enslaved people into the 19th century. The property was bisected by the Brighton Railroad, and soon afterward, Pounds began developing the portion east of the railroad line as Ditmas Park Development and the portion west as Ditmas Park West. As in Beverly Square West, Ditmas Park West possesses strong architectural and historic cohesiveness due to its rapid development and uniform building type. All but two of its houses were constructed between 1902 and 1910, with the remaining two built in the 1920s. As in Beverly Square West, the district is defined by intact, contiguous streetscapes dominated by Queen Anne, Colonial Revival, and shingle-style houses. Next slide. And although both districts were impacted by Brooklyn's population losses of the 1960s and 70s, both benefited from the renewed interest in historic neighborhoods that came with Brooklyn's brownstone revival. Walking and house tours started by the 1980s were crucial in increasing awareness of these areas' rich architectural history. And since that time, these districts, which initially excluded non-white families, have become increasingly diverse, as African American families, families of East and South Asian and Middle Eastern backgrounds have purchased houses here. These districts also have a substantial Jewish community, which first took root by the 1930s. Next slide. Turning to housing, we think it's important to note that landmark designation does not prevent development. It guides change to ensure compatibility with neighborhood character, and as shown on this slide, accessory dwelling units are permitted on all properties in both districts, either within an existing residential building or an existing accessory structure such as a detached garage. Housing growth, including conversions and the creation of ADUs, can continue in both districts in support of citywide housing initiatives under City of Yes. LPC is also advancing new guidance and rules to further streamline these types of approvals and support housing growth and for designated buildings and sites. Next slide. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present the Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West Historic Districts, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before I begin, I want to recognize Councilmember Hanif for joining us. Just one question. Several people have testified at both LPC public hearings in support of the historic districts also expressed support for expanding the boundaries of the historic districts. For the record, can you explain how LPC decided where to place the boundaries of the proposed historic districts?
Sure. The boundaries are based on over 20 years of survey of the broader area. LPC's research department has consistently determined that the districts as designated represent the best represent suburban Victorian Flatbush and are the most intact streetscapes comparable to nearby historic districts. Now, that's not to say that there aren't high quality, very intact buildings that are outside of the district. However, the districts reflect the areas where intact streetscapes remain the most consistent and are comparable to nearby districts that LPC is designated.
Okay. I want to recognize Councilmember Rita Joseph, who has a question.
Thank you, Chair Marte. The boundaries that did not make it in, did you give recommendations as to how they can become landmarked in the future?
It's always good to go back. And like I said, we have an over 20-year history of surveying the broader area. And we certainly will go back and resurvey those properties and consider them in the future. However, with the city's or the agency's sort of priorities of looking at designations equitably over all 5 boroughs, I can't really predict whether the commission will bring that item up at a future date. We will certainly be looking at other parts of the city, but it's not to say that our time in this neighborhood is ended. We will certainly be in the neighborhood and be actively surveying as the years, to come.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to now recognize any of my colleagues if anyone has any questions or remarks. Seeing none, thank you. The applicant panel is now excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this item?
Yes, we have people testifying in person and online.
In the first panel, we'll have Frampton Tolbert, Sally Barman, and Janice Hyman. You can come. Yeah.
They might be in the overflow room. Okay. So just say if they're in the overflow room.
Yeah, if anyone's in the overflow room and is planning to testify for this panel, please come to room 1.
Okay.
You guys may join the panel.
Oh, good. Okay, you can just start reading this. Yeah, the whole.
As a reminder, if I or other council members have questions, witnesses are asked to remain online or stay seated here at the microphone after their testimony until they are excused. For those participating online, once you or your group has been excused following any questions, participants may continue to view the live stream broadcast of this hearing on the council website. Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak. Please do not begin until the Sergeant of Arms has started the clock. We will now hear from the first panel. You can begin.
Good morning. Chair Marte, committee members, and thank you to Councilmember Rita Joseph for being here today. I'm Frampton Tolbert, Executive Director of the Historic Districts Council, which is the citywide advocate for New York's historic neighborhoods. We work to ensure the preservation of significant neighborhoods, buildings, and public spaces, uphold the integrity of the landmarks law, and further the preservation ethic. We are not against development, and we believe growth should be thoughtful, sensitive, and aligned with community consensus. Preservation is also sound economic policy. In a report published by the Landmarks Conservancy, historic districts make up less than 5% of New York's land area, yet they generate more than $800 million in economic investment each year. They support approximately 9,000 jobs annually and provide over $500 million in wages to New Yorkers. For more than 2 decades, HCC has worked closely with the neighborhoods of Victoria and Flatbush to support historic efforts. The designation of the Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West historic districts add important pieces to the larger quilt that defines Victoria and Flatbush, one of the largest and most intact Victorian residential communities of middle-class housing in the country, and affirms the significance of these neighborhoods. More than 90% of homeowners in the area supported this designation, and the LPC had one of the most positive hearings in recent memory, with over 100 individuals testifying in person or sending letters in support of both historic districts. Not a single person opposed the Beverly Square West Historic District. Preservation is not the enemy of progress. Development continues within historic districts through adaptive reuse and new construction that represents neighborhood scale and character. In fact, historic designation often benefits development by providing stability, prestige, and long-term value. A 2014 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that historic district designation increases property values both within and surrounding designated areas, particularly in neighborhoods outside Manhattan. Most importantly, designation gives communities like Ditmas Park West and Beverly Square West formal recognition of their identity and history. Thank you.
You may begin.
Hi,
Make sure that the light is on. You're good.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for hearing us today. I'm Janice Hammond from Beverly Square West Association. And of course, there's no argument. We can all agree when LPC designates an area, they've studied it well. And we recognize the architectural integrity of our homes. But I don't know if anyone realizes what goes on inside the homes. And we are not strictly a neighborhood of one-family homes. We are 2- and 3-family homes as well. And within these homes, some of the one-family homes are multi-generational, giving affordable housing to children, grandchildren, swapping, babysitting. We really support affordability and social issues as well. Some of the 2-family homes are owned by elderly homeowners renting to younger people who need affordability in exchange for helping. My next door neighbor's was shoveled by his tenants because they have great arrangements. I have a 2-family house where my daughter and son-in-law, it's a mother-daughter type situation, and we support one another. They're able to live in an affordable place. These are not the only examples. We support affordability as the neighborhood exists right now, and I want City Council to understand that.
Great. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Sally Bowman, and I'm a resident of Beverly Square West. I want to thank everyone here, and I want to thank Rita Joseph again for all of your hard work. I really agree with everything that's been said already, so I'm not going to repeat the parts of my testimony that talks about the support our neighborhood has. I want to continue with what Janice is talking about. You know, beyond the architectural integrity, the value to that, it really, I do want to address when we're talking about what happens in the homes. So, and as they talked about the Landmark Preservation Committee today with the ADUs, on my block, and this is representative of Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West, almost all the homes have garages, which are now eligible to be made into ADUs. My family is a 2-family home. Almost every house on my block is a 2- or 3-family home. Over 60% have tenants. I have a tenant, a woman and her niece. They have lived with me for 24 years. And I, like many of my neighbors, I have never raised her rent. And I am not a wealthy person. I'm a single mother. I have spent my entire career in the nonprofit sector, working in Flatbush and in Brooklyn. I sent my children to PS 139. I was able to stay in my home because of my tenant, because I was able to rent rooms in my house, not as an Airbnb, as just someone who is able to do that. My next door neighbor is 97 years old. She moved into her house when she was 14 as a multi-generational house. I should say when I moved in as well, I chose to do so because my house was large enough to have my extended family. My sister and her family live with us. It was what enabled me to stay in Brooklyn, to be able to afford to stay in Brooklyn. So I think it's a really important message to think about the fact that I don't know what happens in other neighborhoods, but in our neighborhood, we can support both. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council for this panel? Seeing no questions, this panel is excused.
Sorry, what was your name?
Sally Bowman. Thank you.
No, of course. All right. The next individuals I would like to call up for the panel are Mary Louise Clemens, Lisa Darto, and Sue Fishkin.
She's somewhere warm. Really.
Her.
We're all jealous in here.
No, I'm in the snow. I'm upstate New York and 20 inches of snow.
All right. We'll start first with the people who are in person, then we'll go to the person remote. So you may begin. And remember to turn on the microphone when you speak.
Hi, my name's Mary Louise Clemens, and I'm a resident of Beverly Square West. Again, I'd like to thank Rita Joseph for her support in this. We have worked tirelessly as a community to make this landmarking happen, and I think one thing to note about this, there's many reasons why we want this to happen, but that other people have already spoken to. But in times like this where people disagree on many things, virtually nobody in this entire neighborhood that lives in the neighborhood has disagreed with this. We all support this, and I think that's a unique thing to happen, and that we should let nature and people come together at a very difficult time. That's it.
Hi, my name is Sue Fishkin. I live at 317 Rugby Road, which had become an icon for the neighborhood. We used to run a bed and breakfast out of our home. I want to say that in addition to housing, which of course is a very important thing, our home is a two-family home, and we're trying to figure out now how to make it livable for our youngest child and her fiance, in addition to us. I want to say that the neighborhood itself has its own life, and by denying the right of Beverly Square West, or maybe it's not a right, but the possibility of Beverly Square West gaining landmark status, just see a crumbling happening. This is a neighborhood that is visited by people from all over the country and all over the world. And the fact that we are intact is one of the largest areas of Victorian homes where people have really spent a lot of money to update and make the homes as beautiful as possible for the public should not be disregarded. And I thank you for having us here. And Ms. Joseph, I thank you so much for the support that you've given our neighborhood.
Yes, my name is Lisa Drejo. I live at 260 Marlborough Road. I am on one of the designated streets in Beverly Square West that's being considered for landmarking. And I too want to express my gratitude to Rita Joseph because she's been a big advocate. I've lived in the neighborhood for almost 25 years. I raised my children. They went to public school. It was amazing to see the diversity of their class at a school where Ms. Joseph had also attended. And I'm just here to show my support and to also speak on behalf of our neighborhood. We did a survey back in the springtime, and of the respondents, of which we had over 60% respondents, 95% supported landmarking. Over the years that I've lived in the community, I've seen it become safer. I've seen it become even more open to community events where people from all over the city come and attend music events on porches, plays that happen in the street. We have visitors from all over the world. When they get off the train, they cannot believe what they're seeing, that they're in New York City. It's a truly unique neighborhood. I've also seen how the neighborhood has moved towards preservation on its own, a trend that will continue with landmarking. And I also want to acknowledge that back in 2009, the neighborhood fought for upzoning so that the commercial areas close by could also increase housing density. And we've seen tremendous increase in housing units go up in our area. We are adjacent to that community, so we too believe that we can preserve both the neighborhood that's truly historic, very unique, draws visitors from all over, but also is supportive of additional housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, no questions. You may be excused. Up next, we have Lawrence Becker. And I want to check if there's any more people in person that wish to testify on this panel. Yeah? Did you fill out?
What's your name? Let me look for that. Okay. I'll keep looking for it.
I guess
Maybe
you can
call.
come up as well. Great. You may begin. You have to press the button. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Members of the committee, I'm very pleased to be able to appear before you today in support of the Landmark Preservation Commission's determination to include Beverly Square West as landmarked. I do not want to repeat anything everybody else has said. I just want to point out that this will preserve an historic neighborhood in our city, one that is actually one of the first suburbs in New York City. When the city was being created, you'll note that the landmark preservation staff said that most of the houses were constructed between 1890 and 1910. City of New York was incorporated in the late 1890s, and this was really considered a suburb of New York City at the time. And preserving the Victorian houses in this neighborhood will serve the city well and serve the neighborhood well. And the Historic District, the Victorian Association, the Landmark Preservation Commission, and our council person, Rita Joseph, who's worked so hard for us and who I thank, all agree, and I hope you do too. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair Marte and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldwyn, speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Conservancy is pleased to be here supporting designation of these historic districts. Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West well represent the history of Brooklyn at the start of the 20th century. These neighborhoods replaced former farmland in just 10 years as transportation improvements opened up new sections of the borough. These peaceful enclaves boast a consistency of scale and styles that certainly recommend them for designation. The 2- and 3-story, mostly wood-clad houses are on large lots set back from the street with continuous open front lawns. They were built in the Queen Anne and Colonial Revival styles and featured Tudor and shingle-style details, all typical of early 20th century. There have been some alterations or additions since these communities were built, but even these minor changes don't impinge on the overall community. Altogether, they exhibit a distinct sense of place. We applaud the actions of residents and elected officials who energized the cause of designating these districts. We understand that local advocates have envisioned larger designations and join others in the hope that the Landmarks Commission will continue to evaluate that request and designate more districts in the coming years. As you think about this designation, there is a larger issue hanging over us, the impact of historic districts on New York City. At some point, you might hear that historic districts are preventing new housing or that there needs to be a moratorium on designations. As you have also heard, note that historic districts encompass less than 5% of land and lots. Many are in the densest neighborhoods, and designation helps limit the demolition of existing affordable housing. There are many reasons why housing is so expensive in this city, but the presence of historic districts is such a small factor in that discussion. The attached map shows that well. The districts have proven to be a success for the city, revitalizing neighborhoods, protecting homes, fighting climate change, and celebrating the building crafts. Preservation is also a strong economic engine, creating jobs and encouraging heritage tourism, all accomplished in this small land space. We hope that more districts will do all of this while continuing to tell New York's whole story. Thank you.
Thank you. And this panel may be excused. Online, we have Dina Tace-Winter, Robin Redmond, Joanne Alblastil, and Dave Herman. We'll first start with Dina.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Dina Tass-Winter, testifying on behalf of Village Preservation, New York City's largest neighborhood historic preservation organization, founded in 1980 to help preserve the special history of Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo. We appreciate the opportunity to testify this morning, and we want to especially thank and congratulate Councilmember Christopher Marte for his appointment as chair of this subcommittee. Councilmember Marte has ably represented communities of Lower Manhattan for over 4 years, and we could not be happier to see him in this role. I am speaking today in support of the designation of both Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West historic districts in Brooklyn. These historic districts are an important part of New York City's heritage and development, capturing the city's post-consolidation growth at the turn of the last century as generous, rambling homes in the latest architectural styles were developed to accommodate the city's growing population. These houses are some of the finest examples of early 20th century residential development in NYC and represent an important phase of this city's growth. We are better for ensuring their preservation. We hope to see the Landmarks Preservation Commission undertake more designations like these in all 5 boroughs, in places where important history can still be seen and has the potential to shape our future and inform our understanding of our past. In fact, these 2 districts, as discussed, are truncated versions of the districts which residents had initially proposed and worked for years to see designated, and we hope the Commission may consider including areas they left out of these designations, even as they also look across the city at other worthy areas in neighborhoods that are calling out for preservation. Under the prior administration, landmarks designations reached an all-time low over the course of the 60-year existence of the LPC. We hope that under this new administration and with the support of this committee, we will see that unfortunate trend reversed and the full spectrum of our city's diverse heritage and history preserved. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Robin is up next.
You may begin.
Sorry. Good morning, and thank you for considering Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West for landmarking. My name is Robin Redman, and I'm the Executive Director of Flatbush Development Corporation, a community development organization proudly celebrating 50 years of preserving neighborhoods and strengthening Flatbush. First, I'd like to thank Councilmember Rita Joseph for her support and for being such a staunch advocate for the landmarking of both Beverly Square West and Ditmas Park West. And I'd like to thank you, Councilmember Marte, and your committee members for the opportunity to speak this morning. Victorian Flatbush is home to 11 neighborhood associations, 5 of which are already landmarked. Victorian Flatbush holds one of the largest concentrations of freestanding wood frame Victorian homes in the country. In 2012, FDC, along with 6 undesignated neighborhood associations, submitted a proposal we called Complete the Quilt, envisioning Victorian Flatbush as a beautiful quilt with a few missing patches. Today, we're one step closer to completing this quilt. Flatbush was designed as a commuter suburb for middle class and officially became part of Brooklyn in 1894. The developers of both neighborhoods were Lewis Pond, John Sawkins, and T.B. Ackerson, intentionally created communities within walking distance of Manhattan-bound trains. At the October 21st, 2025 Landmarks Preservation Council public hearing, there was an overwhelming number of testimonials submitted in support of landmarking both neighborhoods. In total, 43 testified in support of the proposed designation and 3 were opposed. The commission also received 60 letters and emails in support and 2 opposed. Clearly, pride of home ownership remains strong. But these are neighborhoods.
Thank you for your testimony.
Both...
Time has expired.
Up next, we have Joanne.
Begin.
Joanne?
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you so much for having this hearing, and I want to thank the committee and Councilwoman Rita Joseph for all her untiring work that she has done for her entire community. Up until a year and a half ago, I was the president and CEO of Canva for 46 years and Canva Housing Ventures for 20 years. Canva Housing Ventures is a supportive housing development nonprofit agency. So I am certainly very supportive of any sort of supportive housing development. However, I think that development should be on different corridors. I'm totally in favor of the designation of Dippers Park West, where I live, and Beverly Square West. My parents moved to Marlborough Road with the 6 children in 1959. And of the 6 children, 3 of us have lived in these areas for a number of years. One of my sisters moved. My other sister's family is still there. I'm still there. And my daughter lives down the block from me. These are communities, and we live as a community, and we are not opposed to development, but we would like to preserve our neighborhoods. And I think it's very important that we do, and that the neighborhood is the beautiful homes, but also the other areas with larger buildings. That's a community, and that's what we are. And I'd like it to continue that way. So I'm very much in support of these designations, as well as the continued appropriate development of supportive housing for low-income and formerly homeless families. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And David, you may now speak.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for considering Beverly Square West for landmarking. My name is Dave Herman, and I've been living on Ruby Road for 25 years. First, I want to thank Radio Councilman for your help in protecting something truly special. I fully support landmarking, including a wider landmarking of Beverly Square West, but this neighborhood is a living, breathing piece of Brooklyn history, and I've fallen in love with it not for the houses themselves, but what they represent. And what they represent is architectural value. The houses are amazing, truly one of a kind. You know, in Europe, you see, they protect historical districts. Here in New York, we don't always hold on so tightly. We build, we tear down, we move on. But this neighborhood is one of the rare places where you can go and walk down the street and feel connected to the past, to the city, and to the rest of the country. Because if you travel across America, you'll find neighborhoods like ours, small clusters of Victorians, wood frame houses, all built on the dream. And when New Yorkers walk these streets, they're transported. For a moment, they're not in the city of skyscrapers, they're in Anywhere, USA. And that, to me, is part of what makes this city so endlessly surprising, but also this neighborhood. This neighborhood, is full of a history. It tells a story. These homes were built in a wave of optimism, the belief that regular families could own a piece of beauty, that the kind of history that makes this neighborhood special. And we're not just a corner of Brooklyn, we're a living time capsule of the American ambition, craftsmanship, and community spirit. Community, the neighborhood isn't just a place to live, it's a destination. People from all over Brooklyn and the world come to walk these streets. If you've ever been here, for example, on Halloween, you'll see on that night literally thousands upon thousands of children filling the blocks, having an experience that could only happen in Brooklyn and only happen here. It's pure Brooklyn magic, an experience of community that makes lifelong memories for kids and parents alike. And it's one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the world. I'd like to note that this community has met goals over the past decade for additional housing and affordable housing, and that need was met.
Thank you for your testimony. Time has expired.
The designated building corridors, particularly on Coney Island and Cortellia Road.
Thank you, David. That panel is now excused. We have one more speaker, Christopher Leon Johnson.
Hello, my name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I'm showing opposition to this land use application, and I want to make this clear that this council member, Rita Joseph, is captive to transportation alternatives and open plans and open year for all. I actually had a walking tour with transportation alternatives, and there's a reason why that they really want this land use application, because they want to put their little crappy open streets all over the Victoria area of Flatbush, of Ditmas, and Beverly. So we have a council member that need to be on the record saying that that she's captive to these nonprofits, and these nonprofits want this development only for themselves. this is the same council member that Rita Joseph that will never pull a finger to say that we need to will push for redevelopment and upzoning of Newkirk Plaza because she know what will happen to those votes when she tried to run for Brooklyn Borough president if Mr. Reynoso was to resign from the Brooklyn Borough president race and go for Congress. This is a bad application for everybody. This is going to ruin, really upzone the whole neighborhood that she wants because she's captive, and it's feckless of her to allow this to happen. This is a crappy application. This should be rejected. At least if we have a spine, Rita Joseph, please make it for the whole area, not just keep it open to allow developers to erect what they want to erect. But we all know you're going to allow it happen because you love you love transportation alternatives, and that's what they want. And they hate parking, and there's a lot of parking get around that area. So, you know what I mean? This application should be rejected, and I support the neighborhood. I love that neighborhood. I went there one time with Transo, and I see what's going on. So thank you so much, and enjoy your day. Thank you.
There being no other members of the if there are any remote public participants who wish to testify and have not already done so, please press the raise hand button now. And if you are here with us in person one last time, please see the Sergeant of Arms to fill out a speaker card. There being no other members of the public who wish to testify regarding these two pre-consider LUs for Beverly Square West Historic District and Ditmas Park West Historic District, the public hearing is now closed and the items are laid over. I now open a public hearing for LU1 for Prospect Farm acquisition and application by New York City Department of Parks and Recreation and NYC Department of Citywide Administrative Services for the acquisition of property at 1194 Prospect Avenue for the continued use of the site as a community garden. This project is located in Brooklyn in Councilmember Hanif's district. I would like to welcome Councilmember Hanif to make a brief statement.
Thank you, Chair Marte, and good afternoon. I'm Councilmember Shahana Hanif. I represent Brooklyn. I'm here today regarding the Prospect Farm acquisition application in my district. This application seeks approval for the city through the Parks Department to acquire a privately owned lot that is currently operating as a community garden. Prospect Farm is a vibrant community space where neighbors come together around a shared commitment to gardening, stewardship, and community care. This acquisition would preserve the site's use as a community garden while allowing parks to formally manage the space, making it eligible for city programs such as Green Thumb, and the critical resources and capital support these programs can provide. While I strongly support this project, I want to use today's discussion to continue working with Parks and the Department of Transportation. I'm disappointed they're not here to ensure the garden is adequately protected from potential impacts related to nearby future construction, particularly the planned reconstruction of the Sealy Street Bridge, which is directly adjacent to this site. I look forward to collaborating with both agencies to ensure the community and the garden itself are minimally impacted by this work. Thank you again, Chair Marte, and to my colleagues on the subcommittee. I look forward to hearing from the applicant and the members of the public. Thank you.
Great. Appearing today on this panel is Jess Wackler from NYC Parks. We also have Colleen Alderson, and Matt Drury. Thank you for that. Those wishing to testify remotely must register online by visiting the council website at council.nyc.gov/land use. Panelists, please ensure that your microphones are on. Council, would you please administer the affirmation?
Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and state your name for the record, making sure the microphone is on.
Jess Wackler.
Matt Drury.
Colleen Alderson.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this subcommittee and an answer to all council member questions?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Thank you, applicant panelists. For the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin.
Thank you, Chair, Councilmember Hanif, and the committee. Good morning. My name is Jess Walkler, and I'm a project development coordinator for the Parks Department. In attendance with me today are my Parks colleagues, Colleen Alderson, Chief of Parklands and Real Estate, and Matt Drury, Chief of Citywide Legislative Affairs. We are joined virtually by our DCAS colleagues and co-applicants, Alex Trzowski, Chris Grove, and Shelton Getter. Next slide, please. Today I'm presenting on ULURP application C250304PQK. Through this application, the Parks Department proposes the city's purchase of Brooklyn Block 5267, Lot 19, the project site, to preserve its use as part of the Prospect Farm Community Garden. This proposed action is a site acquisition led by co-applicants New York City Parks and DCAS. Next slide, please. The project site is located in Windsor Terrace, Brooklyn, Community Board 7. The 3,207 square foot lot is sandwiched between Greenwood Cemetery, which is to the west, just out of frame, and Prospect Park to the east. It is also a block to the east of the Prospect Expressway. Next slide. On this slide, our view of the project site is rotated 90 degrees, so we're looking west at the site's frontage on Prospect Avenue. The site is approximated by the red outline and makes up a portion of the 15-year-old Prospect Farm Community Garden. It is just to the south of Sealy Street Bridge overpass. Next slide. The image on the left was taken from within the garden looking north at Sealy Street Bridge, standing amidst garden beds and other plantings. In the second image, we are standing across the street from the project site looking west at the site's frontage on Prospect Avenue. Here you can see the sloped nature of the project site. Next slide. The site and surrounding area are zoned R5B, which permits an FAR of 1.5 and 2.0 for qualifying residential sites, and a maximum building height of 35 feet and 50 feet for qualifying sites. There are also C13 commercial overlays on Prospect Avenue, which are outlined in blue on the map. Next slide. 1, 2, and multifamily buildings, symbolized in tan, yellow, and brown respectively, make up the predominant land use in the area. Next slide. Looking more closely at the garden, I want to draw your attention to Lot 19 in red. This is the site that Parks is proposing to acquire. We are not seeking to map this parcel as park, as community gardens are considered an inconsistent use for mapped parkland due to their more limited hours and restrictive uses compared to a traditional park. So the proposed action today is just an acquisition without any mapping. Please note the black dashed line, which approximates the full extent of Prospect Farm's gardening operations. This extends beyond the acquisition parcel. Included within the dashed line is Lot 118, shown in blue, which is under the jurisdiction of the New York City Department of Transportation, DOT. This lot is currently being used as part of the garden. You can also see that the garden extends into a portion of the mapped 100-foot Prospect Avenue right-of-way, shown in yellow. The garden also extends into the privately owned lot to the south, which has the same owners as the red area. Next slide. A little history on the project site. Tom Ngati and Emma Matos Ramos became the owners of the site in 1996 and still own the property to this day, along with the residential property to the south. When Tom and Emma originally acquired the property, it was a dumping ground. Over many years, they, along with neighborhood volunteers, cleaned up the site and surrounding areas, and in 2010, Prospect Farm was established. Next slide. Today, Prospect Farm has approximately 40 members, and a unique element of the garden is its communally run gardening beds, of which there are 15, some of which you can see in the image to the right. Next slide. There are also 2 native wildflower planting areas. Produce grown in the garden is distributed amongst garden members. And the garden also hosts a food scrap drop-off twice a week, which is turned into compost used in the garden and given away for free to the community. The image on the right shows the garden's 3-bin composting system. Next slide. The garden also hosts at least 3 public events each year, which you can see some of in these photos. Next slide. Prospect Farm is currently registered with Green Thumb, the Parks Department program that supports volunteer-run community gardens across the city. As a registered Green Thumb garden, Prospect Farm has access to free gardening materials such as soil, mulch, and wood chips. They also receive technical assistance from Green Thumb staff. In return, the garden must remain open to the public for a minimum of 20 hours each week throughout the growing season, along with other requirements intended to support public access. However, if the project site were acquired by the city, Prospect Farm would begin the process of entering into a license agreement with the Parks Department, administered through our Green Thumb program. With licensed status, Prospect Farm would be eligible to receive labor and capital improvements from Green Thumb, such as raised garden beds, fencing, sheds, gazebos, or internal water supply, depending on the availability of funding. As a licensed garden, Prospect Farm would still be required to meet the same public access requirements as before. Next slide. Additionally, once city-owned and assigned to the Parks Department, the project site would be subject to Chapter 6 of the New York City Parks Rules found in Title 56 of the Rules of the City of New York. Chapter 6 establishes procedures that ensure community gardens are properly maintained and safeguarded. These rules do not expire and cannot be changed without a public rulemaking process. In contrast, gardens on privately owned land enjoy no such protections. Private owners may choose to sell or change the use of their property at any time. Next slide. In summary, we are proposing the purchase of Brooklyn Block 5267, Lot 19, to preserve its use as part of the Prospect Farm Community Garden. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you for the presentation. I would like to now recognize Councilmember Hanif, who has a few questions.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I primarily had questions for the Department of Transportation. So not sure if I want to pass and come back, but I do have a few questions for Parks. Could you share the steps the department has already taken to help Prospect Farm protect the perimeter and the vulnerable edges of the garden?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So we have been in contact with the gardeners, and we have had meetings with them before we started the ULERT process, both through Green Thumb. They have a point of contact through their engagement outreach coordinator, and then also through our Parklands and real estate team, which is dealing specifically with the acquisition. We have spoken with the gardeners, and we've heard a lot of these requests to protect the edges. One of those meetings was with your office. And we have been examining the possibility of, they asked for a letter of support, or a letter between DOT and Parks, and we did bring that back to DOT.
I'll just jump in more broadly and add that when it comes to gardens on non-Parks property, on property that's not in our jurisdiction, gardens that are registered with us, just broadly speaking, we're able to provide those gardens with technical support, supplies, things of that nature. But when it comes to sort of physical improvements, literal fencing, things of other sort of capital or other significant improvements, we wouldn't be able to kind of advance those kind of discussions since it's, private property. But we do our best, obviously, through outreach coordinators and the relationships we built with the gardens over the years, that gardens that are registered with us, even if they're not licensed, that is to say on Parks property, we still provide them with, pretty robust set of, resources and other expertise.
Got it. And then if the site is acquired, what specific commitments can Parks make to protecting the farm from impacts related to the adjacent construction or other infrastructure projects?
Yeah, I can broadly state that, if the acquisition is to move forward and the property is to come over our jurisdiction, we work very, very closely with our fellow agencies for any construction that's happening adjacent to Parks property. So we fully expect, and in fact, there have been very positive interactions and coordination with DOT as they are going through their design. The project is not advanced enough to talk about details at this point, is my understanding. But we have a strong record of history. And in fact, the Parks Department has what we call an interagency division, which provides construction permits to agencies or private entities, for that matter, that are doing construction adjacent to or in proximity to a park. So there's a whole process in place to kind of work through
Could you
those kind of
clarify what that looks like?
construction permit. I mean, it depends on the nature of the project, but it is a division within our capital team that. It's all. There's a page on our website where, someone who's looking to advance construction adjacent to a park's property, provides the details, and there's sort of a formulated interaction where the agency actually issues a construction permit if there's going to be impacts upon parks, property that's under Parks' jurisdiction. So not only is there a formalized process for it, but in addition to that is a strong record of engagement and cooperation with us and our sister agencies, including DOT in this case.
Understood. That's very helpful to know. I think we all know that the Sealy Bridge construction is what's causing a lot of anxiety, and the community wants to be a part of it. We want to make sure that the design input is gathered from community members, longstanding folks who use the garden, who live in the area. And the hope with today's hearing was to come out with a memorandum of an agreement or an understanding that DOT is very willing and open to doing the rigorous, comprehensive community engagement that we would like to see.
Yeah, we understand and appreciate that, and it's I haven't been directly involved in conversations. My understanding is they have met with your team. I think they've issued a letter or two sort of expressing sentiments along these lines. At the risk of splitting hairs, a memo of understanding or a memo of agreement between the two agencies, just from a legal perspective, is a little premature when we don't have control or jurisdiction over the property, right? So because there's nothing to agree over yet, right? So I think this acquisition is frankly one of the important steps that'll help advance that project. That discussion forward, while the project design on the bridge also advances. So we see the two as distinct and separate, but obviously related.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the memorandum of agreement I know that the design's not in it, or we don't have a final project, but we hear from our community that the community engagement piece is still very limited and not as comprehensive as they would like. And so having that in a written agreement so that we can go back to DOT and say, hey, you all decided that there's going to be a community engagement process during this timeline as we're moving into the design phase or construction phase. And so that's what my understanding is of how the community wanted to hold our city agencies to account.
Sure, and we appreciate that, and we're happy to, I think as the conversation evolves, we're happy to participate in that, and we obviously can't speak to the exact form or shape that DOT's engagement efforts. My understanding is they pride themselves on as robust as possible in terms of that engagement. We're happy to, as a key stakeholder, obviously, if there's going to be discussions about what the exact shape of that looks like and how that gets sort of codified or memorialized, we're obviously happy to participate in all those conversations.
And finally, are there other examples of sites similar to this where parks and DOT have had to either work together or?
In short, yes, but I'm racking my brain a little bit to cite specific examples. But I know we do have a strong sort of just broader narrative history, anecdotally, of interagency cooperation when it comes to this sort of thing. I don't know that it's necessarily been adjacent to a garden per se, or some of the particulars might be a little different. Colleen, I don't know if you know anything offhand.
I know we're working with them very closely. They are redoing a bridge in Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx, Shore Road Bridge, and there's careful coordination. Doesn't affect a community garden, but it is, connects both parts of Pelham Bay Park, and we've been working with them very closely, specifically with their bridges units for years, and we've been working through various things, including a required wetland mitigation. So we're pretty used to it. They have their bridges, are proximate and extend over parklands. So we of course, have a relationship with them to ensure the integrity of the parkland affected, to make sure we're giving permission and approval before any work is done in our park, and making sure that restoration, the park is made whole. So, and that's what we'll look out for the community garden. We will have to issue them a construction permit, their contractor, if they're proposing to be in the garden, and ensure that
That's the DOT?
yes, or their contractor, usually in most instances, and ensure that the restoration of the garden is made whole. So, and I would just add that we've been talking to City DOT. They're fully aware of the community garden, you know, its conditions, and they have committed to work with the Parks Department to ensure that the garden is, you know, minimally affected, and make sure that the garden is kept as intact as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more question. What consideration has been given to Community Board 7's conditional favorable recommendation calling DOT to transfer the the site next door to Department of Parks?
So I don't think we can formally speak for DOT, but I do understand they've expressed openness to the dialogue, and they have committed, as noted, to a sort of full public engagement as their bridge project moves forward. At this point, my understanding is that the design is still in too preliminary a stage to kind of speak to those details. That's my understanding. But we expect that those more detailed technical conversations will be part of the engagement as it moves forward.
Thank you. And for the record, it's really disappointing that DOT didn't join us here today, even though they've been asked to show up. And because it's extremely rare that we have a public sighting opportunity in our city. And so hopefully next time they show up and this doesn't become a pattern.
We appreciate, we'll obviously relay that, you know, back. I mean, in fairness, they're not an applicant to this land use action. So, I mean, just for whatever that's worth, but we understood, we did, you know, the request was relayed. Here we are. But, you know, we look forward to moving forward and continuing the dialogue.
Great. Well, thank you. And this applicant panel is now excused.
Thank you.
Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this item?
Yes, there are approximately 8 in public.
Okay. First up, we have Tom Angadi, Christopher Johnson, Emma James, and Cassandra Warney. As a reminder, if I or other council members have questions, witnesses are asked to remain online or stay seated here at the microphone after their testimony until they are excused. For those participating online, once you or your group has been excused following any questions, participants may continue to view the live stream broadcast of this hearing on the council website. Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak. Do not begin until the Sergeant of Arms has started the clock. We will now hear from this first panel. Tom, you may begin.
Thank you, Councilman Marte. It's great to see you. I appreciate this opportunity. As was stated, myself and my wife, Emma Mato Ramos, bought this land about 30 years ago. And when we showed up to sign the papers, it turned out that we got this extra lot with it. And after struggle, you know, I should actually, for the rest of the panel, explain. I'm a retired professor of urban planning. I've been a supporter of open space. I've been a supporter of Green Thumb even before it was born. And so when I tried to remediate the soil and plant in it, I discovered what many other urban gardeners have discovered. It was contaminated. And when we spent a couple of years trying to remediate the soil and found out that that was going to be a very long-term, probably a too long-term task, so we started doing raised beds. I put out a call saying, I can't do this alone. And the next week, about 100 people showed up. Some came from the Bronx, from other parts of Brooklyn. There was great interest in this. And so over the next year, we founded Prospect Farm, focusing on 3 principles: building community, oh goodness, saving the, improving the soil, and what was the other one? Anyway, from the beginning, the important thing for this hearing is community was number 1. And my background and experience has been in urban planning. I was a professor of urban planning. I was worked for the Brooklyn Office of City Planning for 6 years. And so I think that's the main point I want to make here. We have community members here who are gardeners, who are active. The other main point I want to make is I had the privilege of meeting with an architect for DOT before this was actually entered ULURP. And I was a little bothered by the design that was cooked up by DOT that essentially reduced the attractiveness. It was a very poor design. It reduced the attractiveness of the garden. It took valuable space. And then the other thing I have to say is it borders, the Sealy Street Bridge borders the property. And my Sealy Street neighbors are very knowledgeable of our history. 30 years ago, when we moved into the neighborhood, there was a big tussle with DOT because they wanted to rebuild the bridge. And when they hired engineers, they found that the foundations of surrounding houses would be compromised and that it was a terrible design. I am disturbed by DOT's lack of presence in the neighborhood. When I had the privilege of meeting with this one architect, I said, fine, thank you for consulting me, but you need to consult the gardens. This is a community project. Oh yes, we'll do that. We've done participation before. And I don't trust that word. And I think we need to get a firm commitment from DOT.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ngati. Up next, we have Emma James. Press the button. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Great. Good morning, Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Emma Wolf James, and I'm a board member of Prospect Farm. And we want to thank Councilmember Hanif a lot and her staff for their support. I'm not going to retell the whole story, but Prospect Farm obviously supports the base acquisition by the Parks Department. We operate as cooperative, no individual plots, just neighbors building community, and it's a super rare model. I first learned about Prospect Farm from a college friend who traveled an hour each way to be a part of it. And people come as far as from the Bronx. So for the last 2 years, and especially now as a recent homeowner in Kensington, which is like a 10-minute walk from the garden, I've come to rely on it as a third space. And spaces like this really matter for people putting down roots in Brooklyn. But of course, as we'll all highlight, we are deeply concerned about the planned Sealy Street Bridge reconstruction. DOT has, to our knowledge, never engaged the garden or community about bridge designs, which includes a proposed ramp that could permanently harm garden operations, not only just being aesthetically awkward, but harming our access to sunlight, especially as a terraced landscape, and also like where our operations for composting and other storage exist currently. So we ask that DOT does commit to community engagement, actual community engagement, before designs are finalized, that garden operations remain functional throughout construction, and that parks in particular, commit to protecting the garden from permanent harm, which would be documented in a joint Parks DOT letter. And ultimately, we support being a community garden. So we thank Parks for their engagement, but not at the cost of our community space. So thank you all.
Thank you. Cassandra?
Hello, Chair and members of the subcommittee. I'm Cassandra Warney. I'm on the board of directors of Prospect Farm. I want to thank Councilmember Hanif and her incredible staff, especially Sabine, for their consistent support of our garden. And I support the acquisition with important caveats. First, some context. Robert Moses wanted Prospect Avenue to be a highway, so DOT jurisdiction is a bit wider than on other streets. So of course, next to the bridge, but it stretches in from the sidewalk into our garden. And this heightens the importance of clear coordination and protection for the garden. We first requested a joint Parks DOT letter in September to protect the fringes of the garden. And on background, what Tom mentioned with the preliminary plans that were presented to him by DOT was for a ramp to go through the garden itself. And so our goal was to be able to document in writing the verbal understanding between Parks and DOT, specifically that the garden could continue the use, the majority of the strip along the sidewalk, and that Parks would act as an active partner to the garden where DOT infrastructure projects can carry long-term implications. And we only learned earlier this month through Councilmember Hanif's office that a draft is underway. And based on what's been communicated to us to this date, I want to be clear, acquisition should not enable DOT to predetermine ADA upgrades or site infrastructure within the garden, absent meaningful community engagement, nor should Parks endorse those decisions. Parks should engage our garden as an active partner, particularly where DOT infrastructure projects pose long-term risks. And we're asking this to be in the joint letter, which would be transferred to an MOA. And so we're just hoping there's going to be a shift in proactive engagement with both Parks and DOT for the garden. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Christopher Johnson.
Yeah, hello. My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I support keeping this garden as the garden. But Mrs. Shahana Hanif, as a council member, you should be disclosing on the record that you have a close tie to a community member that is named Kathy Park Price. And maybe that's the reason why the DOT did not want to come here today, because Kathy Park Price runs the DOT via New York for Parks. New York for Parks works close-handedly with Transportation Alternative that owns the DOT. So, of course, they're not going to show up, because you could tell, I have a big feeling that Kathy Park Price told them not to show up. She runs the DOT. Even as a lobbyist for New York for Parks, she still have control of the DOT with the help of Transportation Alternatives. The reason they won't sell as much as Community Board 7, which is ran by Julio Pena, he will not. I agree with him saying that the DOT should give their portion to the New York City Parks for this land use application. They won't give it away, because the New York DOT is hell bent on working with these developers to make it where that if they have give them 1 inch, they're gonna take the whole mile. So they need their portion, so they could justify having the whole mile. And I have a big feeling that in the years to come, probably about in the next 3-4 years, that the DOT, with the help of Kathy Park Price, and I think that the whole South Brooklyn know that she's a big cancer to Brooklyn. Kathy Park Price is a cancer to Brooklyn politics, because she's hell bent on destroying Brooklyn block by block. This lady, Kathy Park Price, like I said, she'll say, look, let's put a bike lane right in front of the park, and you, Shahana Hanif, will be co-signing it, because you have to. Because if you don't co-sign it, you're not going to be Brooklyn Borough president next year. And that's what's going to happen. The city council need to start calling out Kathy Park Price that she's a cancer to Brooklyn politics. She's hell bent on destroying Park Slope, Windsor Terrace, and Graves, and everywhere in the city. Like I said, I support this application. The DOT need to sell their portion to the parks, to order to make sure the parks, this community park, this community park stay a park. Because if they don't, like I said, I have a big feeling in the next few years that this park is going to be destroyed, is going to be taken away like Elizabeth Street Garden. Thank you so much.
Okay, Chris. Any questions from my colleagues?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Tom, just to have on the record, could you share how you learned about the Sealy Street Bridge design that you were just talking about, and then what to you is proactive community engagement?
the Parks Department set up a meeting solely for me.
And this was because you had requested that.
I didn't specifically request that meeting. I expressed a concern. I had shared with them what I know of the history of the Sealy Street Bridge. And so an architect working for DOT showed up with a sketchy design. But the design was clear enough that there would be an ADA ramp going from the Sealy Street down to Prospect Avenue, right across the front of the park. That didn't look good to me because one of the great aesthetic values of the park is the view of green from the street. And this would essentially be covered by the ramp, and the ramp would essentially go over the main entrance. So I said that, and I said, you know, I theoretically, of course, I support the ADA ramps, but you need to meet with the community. Oh, yes, we'll meet with the community. That meeting never happened, although there have been, the message has gotten through to parks, and we never had that meeting. I'm really concerned. I have a long history working with DOT, and by the way, I used to be on the board of Transportation Alternatives, so I love bicycling. But that's not the issue. The other thing I want to add is that traffic on Sealy Street has diminished qualitatively over the last 2 years since DOT made it one way instead of two-way. That reduced qualitatively the traffic on Sealy Street. I question the not having a discussion about an alternative, which is to close the Sealy Street Bridge, turn it into a wonderful public area above Prospect Avenue. We haven't had the opportunity to have that discussion with DOT. And I'm concerned. I know DOT very well over the years. I used to be on the board of Transportation Alternatives before they discovered bicycle lanes. And they're very narrow. And so that's my concern.
Did you want to add on in terms of the outreach you'd like to see?
Yeah, so in terms of proactive engagement, it's simply transparency. So obviously DOT for a while has some ideas of what they want to do with the bridge. Engage the community. That's not just the garden, that's the neighbors surrounding that, and that hasn't happened. And so this has been an awkward ULURP process because we know what their plans are, but they haven't actually shared them. So it's just having that transparency. I'll say it's the same thing when it comes to the joint letter. Like we asked this in September. We asked parks if there could be like some updates if they were going to do this. And the only updates and understanding that a draft is underway is through your office. And so it's this piece of like, we're just awkwardly knowing conversations are happening, and the main parties that are having those conversations are in no way even letting us know that they're happening. And so just emailing us, letting us know, reflecting back what our community concerns are, and then we're a reasonable group of people in terms of like being able to go back and forth to see what's possible and not what's possible.
My last comment is I just want to say, Mr. Ngati, you are a legend, and you are one of the reasons why I got into government. And I love all your writings, and your inspiration all across the city is seen through community gardens, activism, and community-based planning. So thank you for all your work, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership.
Of course.
I feel very honored that I get to represent him.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this panel is now excused. Up next, we have Kai Lawrence, Angela Pewitt, and Thomas Hincher. Yeah, just a reminder, press the button before you speak. Kai, you can go first. Oh, okay. Oh. Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you. All right, you may begin. One more time. There you go.
Wonderful. I'm in support of the acquisition of Prospect Farm. My name is Angela Pruitt, and I live down the street from the garden, and I've been a member for over 10 years. I'm very concerned by the possibility that DOT will take away space and sunlight by constructing a ramp on the fringes of the garden. I'm a gardener, and my passion are native flowers that are both healing to people and to insects and birds. We are asking to preserve the fringes of our garden with an MOA between Parks and DOT. Today I'll speak about what is at stake on the fringes of the garden that we're asking to be protected. Our pollinator gardens, made of native flowers that are vital to birds and insects, are on the edges of the garden and would be destroyed by a cement ramp. The addition of a permanent ramp would kill the light native plants need to thrive. Our compost setup is on the fringe of the garden. Our community takes pride in our compost facility and the free compost we provide to any who ask and can carry a bag of our organic compost away. Our compost feeds street tree pits as well as neighboring gardens. I spoke of light. Some raised vegetable beds are on the fringe. The ramp will shrink this area, reducing our area for growing vegetables. Because we are already a small garden, reducing our garden space is devastating. The proposed ramp cuts across the front of the garden, casting light and blocking the entrance. So we're just asking that you'll please work to preserve the fringes, the edges of our garden. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tom Hinchin, and I have been a member of Prospect Farm for 15 years, including 10 years on which I served on the board of directors. Over that time, I've witnessed growth in membership and community engagement. I, too, fully support the acquisition of Prospect Farm by Parks. Prospect Farm is a model asset to the Windsor Terrace community and beyond. Our compost collection, our public events, and the beautification of our frontage along Prospect Avenue enhance our neighborhood. Having our land acquired by Parks is a positive step for our community to ensure our garden is a permanent garden for Windsor Terrace. Prospect Farm needs to be preserved in its entirety. It would be unfortunate if any portion of the garden would be lost to any kind of development that would detract from or block the public's enjoyment or access. I am also a resident of Seeley Street. 2.5 years ago, after a campaign on the part of Seeley Street neighbors, the Department of Transportation agreed to make Seeley Street carry traffic in one direction only. As a result, Seeley has once again become a quiet residential street. Traffic has been reduced by well over 50%, also reducing wear and tear on the bridge over Prospect Avenue. I would like to suggest that the proposed replacement of the bridge is no longer necessary. All of us at Prospect Farm are extremely grateful to Councilmember Hanif and her office for their support of Prospect Farm and of the process in which we are now engaged.
Thank you. Any questions for this panel? This panel may be excused. Thank you. If there are any remote public participants who wish to testify and have not already done so, please press the raise hand button now. And if you are here with us in person, please see one of the Sergeant of Arms to first fill out a speaker card. There are no other members of the public who wish to testify regarding LU1 for Prospect Farm acquisition. The public hearing is now closed and the items is laid over. I now open a public hearing for LUs 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Oh, two. It's supposed to be two. Okay. All right. I now open a public hearing for LUs 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 for 395 Flatbush Avenue Extension, an application by HPD in conjunction with Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and DCAS seeking a zoning map amendment to change an existing C64 zoning district to a C612 zoning district and zoning text amendments to map a mandatory inclusionary housing area and amend the special downtown Brooklyn district and an amendment to the Brooklyn Center Urban Renewal Plan. Additionally, this project is seeking deposition approval for city-owned property and a combination site selection and acquisition of real property interests in Councilmember Hudson's district in downtown Brooklyn. These actions will facilitate the development of a 72 mixed-use building containing approximately 1,263 new units of housing with approximately 253 to 279 of permanently affordable MIH units. Appearing today on this panel is Hala Saley, Director of Pre-Development Planning and Urban Design at HPD, Ian Klein, Senior Vice President and Head of Development at Rabina. And who's the last person?
Hi, sorry, I'm Anthony Howard, the Director of Environmental Planning at HPD.
Those wishing to testify remotely must register online by visiting the council website at council.nyc.gov/land-use. Panelists, please ensure that your microphone is on. Council, would you please administer the affirmation?
Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and state your name for the record? Do you say your name.
Ian Klein.
Hala Saleh.
Anthony Howard.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the testimony before this subcommittee and in answer to all council member questions?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you, applicant panelists. For the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and subcommittee members. Thank you for having us here today to present on the 395 Flatbush Avenue redevelopment. Next slide, please. The applicant for this project is HPD alongside DCAS and DOH-MH, who are collectively seeking a series of land use actions to facilitate the development of a new 72-story mixed-use building providing approximately 1,263 mixed income units, approximately 141,280 square feet of non-residential space, and a public plaza. The development partners for this site are Rabina and Park Tower Group, who have an existing ground lease with the city to operate a commercial building on city-owned site in downtown Brooklyn. Next slide. The site is located in the heart of downtown Brooklyn, comprised of an entire block at the intersection of Flatbush and Fulton Street. This is a high opportunity and transit-rich neighborhood with several local resources in the surrounding area as called out on this map. The site sits directly on top of DeKalb Avenue's BRQ subway station and is across the street from the Nevins 2, 3, 4, 5 station. In addition to the immediate train access off the site, there are several bus lines and a city bike station in proximity to the development site. In terms of zoning, the site is currently zoned as a C64, an R10 equivalent zoning district, and within the special downtown Brooklyn district. Next slide. Currently, the site is improved with an existing 7-story commercial building from the 1970s with ground floor retail, office space used by Verizon as a call center, and a parking garage. The land is currently city-owned and under private control through an executed ground lease, and the current ground lease is set to expire in 2042 with an option to extend for an additional 30 years. Given the existing need for additional housing, the city and the developers under the current lease have partnered to restructure the ground lease and convert this commercial building to provide over 1,200 apartments. Next slide. At this time, I'll pass this presentation over to Ian Klein to introduce the proposed project.
Thanks, Hala. So the proposed project would introduce 1,263 mixed-income rental units, 325 of which approximately will be permanently affordable. That'll be the single largest delivery of affordable housing in a single project in the community board within the past decade. And 130 of those units will be permanently affordable to very low-income households. The project will also have a series of other community benefits, including over 10,000 square feet of streetscape and public infrastructure improvements, 66,000 square feet of new retail space, including a percentage of which earmarked for subsidized community-oriented uses, and 75,000 square feet of city agency, community facility, office, and/or civic uses. The project is targeting a series of sustainable construction measures, including Passive House Principles, LEED Well and Fit Well certifications. It's set ambitious MWBE and local hiring goals, and will be taking on 485X Zone B construction wages. Most importantly, there's zero city subsidy required for the project, allowing the project to move faster and any required subsidy to be routed towards other needy projects. Next slide, please. The biggest constraint to construction on this site is that the MTA tunnel runs under over 30% of the land on the southern edge of the site, and the existing building bears on the roof of the subway tunnel structure. This means that the only viable development plan for the site includes a single large building in the northeast corner. In an effort to do the most efficient construction possible, reducing construction costs and therefore maximizing housing, we've come up with a development plan that involves maintaining and adapting the structure on the southern portion of the site that bears on the tunnel and marrying that with a new concrete tower located on the northeast portion of the site. Next slide, please. So this series of diagrams illustrates the development plan. You could see on the left the existing building. The next image over, the portion of the building structural grid that we tend to adapt for our new building. Next image over is the tower located on the north side of the site, which has been designed as an L shape in the most efficient way possible, corridors maximizing travel distance based on life safety requirements. And then finally, on the right, an articulated massing developed by our architectural team led by AAA gold medal winner Deborah Burke and her team, which has rescaled the tower into smaller size articulated chunks. Next slide, please. So in all, the project will offer 163 dwelling units with 25% permanently affordable and using zero city subsidy. 141,280 square feet of non-residential space, including both retail and community facility spaces. Varied streetscape improvements, including a significant public plaza on the south side of the site, widened landscape sidewalks, and enhanced subway entrance, and also a series of sustainability principles in its construction and its operation. Next slide, please. Next slide. So here you can see a plan on the ground floor, the plaza on the south end of the site, which was suggested by folks at City Planning, and we thought was a great idea. We were happy to take on. They've been involved, as has CPC, in commenting on the design of the plaza. Along Flatbush Avenue, we're widening the sidewalk from 11 feet to 18 feet by taking over a current parking lane. That widened sidewalk will now be the same width as the sidewalk on the adjacent street to the south. We are improving the subway entry while keeping the subway open during the entire duration of construction, and then activating the ground floor with new retail uses, community-oriented retail on the ground floor, and a residential lobby located on the northwest corner of the site. Next slide, please. And you could see here the existing subway entry is artificially lowered by a decorative, as the architects call it, skirt that we could remove from the building and fold into our new design, increasing the height above the subway entry from 17 feet to 23 feet, as well as improvements to the flooring, surrounding architecture, et cetera. Next slide, please. And I'll go back to Hala for this.
Great. The project will assume MIH option 1 to provide deeper affordability to account for approximately 325 permanently affordable units. Under this option, the proposed project would provide an average AMI of 60%, which is approximately $87,480 for a family of 3. There would be 130 units that would be set aside for very low-income households earning 40% AMI, or approximately $58,320 for a family of 3. An additional 130 units available for low-income households set at 60% AMI, and 65 units for moderate-income households